Carolingian Empire Part 3, The Fall. The high time of Charlemagne's reign comes right after being made emperor. He gets a marriage proposal from the Byzantine Empress Irene for Charlemagne to marry her daughter. It doesn't lead to anything, but it does show just how wide Charlemagne's image spreads. At the same time, Isaac, an emissary of the Caliph of Baghdad, arrives in Aachen with an elephant and other great presents. There haven't been many elephants in Europe since Hannibal was running around. These are two big-time leaders of the 9th century, and they both show Charlemagne respect. Unfortunately, the 9th and 10th centuries show the end of the Carolingian dynasty and the dividing of the Frankish Empire. Last time we described Charlemagne's empire as conquest, and that's great. The empire is held together by victory. Loyal soldiers remain loyal because their leader will give them loot for their loyalty. The empire grows bigger every year. But there's a problem. What happens when the leaders can't give the soldiers loot? What happens when there aren't any more easy targets? Charlemagne beats everyone there is to beat, and that's why he's considered so great. But he took the easy stuff. He didn't leave much for his successors. When there isn't anything left to give out, do the warriors have to continue to stay loyal to the king? And what about his successors? The next couple Carolingian leaders don't have weakling kingdoms to beat up on. They have to go much farther to find someone to beat up, and that takes a lot of money. Once the Saxons are subdued, one has to go a lot farther north to find opponents. Once the Avars are defeated, one has to go a lot farther into Central Europe. Once the Lombards are finished off, one can't go farther south into Italy because their main man, the Pope, rules that. One can't go too far into the Caliphate of Cordoba because those guys are mean and tough. And one can't go into Anglo-Saxon Britain because they don't have anything worth taking. The successors of Charlemagne are not going to be the provider that he was. First his son Louis the Pious, and then his three lousy grandchildren, Charles the Bald, Louis the German, and Lothar's reigns are filled with civil wars and turmoil. They face rebellions on a regular basis. Charlemagne dies in 814 and his son Louis the Pious, or Louis I, yes, the first Louis, the Louis that starts the chain to Louis XVI many centuries later. Louis the Pious isn't the greatest leader. He attempts to get his youngest son, by a different marriage, into his inheritance plan, and his three older sons rebel. 3 civil wars ensue that greatly weaken Louis the Pious, ending with his defeat. For the rest of his reign, he is allowed to stay on the throne, but has almost no real power. The rebellions are largely because of the king's inability to keep the Carolingian political class as happy as his father could. Louis's son Pepin dies, and his other 3 sons inherit the Frankish kingdom on his death in 840. They are at perpetual war with each other. In 842, Charles the Bald and his brother Louis the German get together at Strasbourg to plan a division of their father's territory amongst the brothers. This is called the Strasbourg Oath. It is here that Europe divides into the map that we recognize today. The Carolingian Empire split into 3 with the Treaty of Verdun in 843. Lothar rules the Middle Frankish Kingdom, Louis the German rules the Eastern Frankish Kingdom, which becomes the Holy Roman Empire and eventually Germany, and Charles the Bald rules the Western Frankish Kingdom, which becomes France in the end. Lothar may have gotten the old capital of Aachen in his Middle Frankish Kingdom, but he also has 2 very long borders with his hostile brothers. This won't bode well for him. For the rest of his reign, a civil war will carve up his kingdom. That's why when we look at his territory today, we see a bunch of Europe's smaller countries, including Belgium, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands. Let me take a minute to say something really crazy. The conflict map of Europe in this time period isn't so different from the conflict map of Europe in modern times. In World War I, most of the fighting takes place between Germany and France in what was at one point Lothar's Middle Francia. Alright, that's the end of the crazy thought. Next time we'll talk about post-Carolingian society and some of the more interesting facets of it. Now, keep in mind that the rest of the Middle Ages is about how Europeans have to pick up the pieces of the fallen Carolingian Empire.